If there's one thing about Cataclysm I really love, it's the overall loot progression and acquisition. There isn't huge jumps between tiers, gearing alts feels fun and fast so it never becomes a chore, and the fact that raids can suit everybody's personal preference on playstyle, as in if you want to do 10-man or 25-man, you can still get the same loot. But there has been a couple of niggly little issues in tier 11 that we don't actually have in tier 12, so I'm going to break that down as well as a load of other stuff as well. Because the thing is, Blizzard learned a few things back in 2011 from tier 11 which they then fixed in tier 12, and it's a shame that we didn't actually have them in place from the start for Cataclysm Classic. So what am I going to find out by sitting through 10 minutes of this handsome Englishman's rants, you might ask? Well, we're going to be talking about why you won't get stuck with lower item level BIS items in tier 12 like you have in tier 11. I'll give you an overview of Firelands so you know what to expect, look at the reputation attached to Firelands and how you get it, and finally, have a look at some of the trash drops as well, which we will actually mention during the low item level discussion anyway. Because you're probably thinking trash drops are completely irrelevant, just like they are in tier 11. Sure, they're great to tide you over until you get a heroic item, but that's about it. Well, in Firelands that isn't actually the case, and investing in a BOE trash item, if there's one that you want in particular and it's on the auction house, could actually be a good investment. So first of all, I'm sure you're already aware, but Firelands is located in Mount Hyjal, and the entrance is at the Sulphur and Spire. Now there's a couple of vendors outside and inside, which both sell or trade exactly the same things. Now I said about the fact that you won't get stuck with low item level BIS pieces. What I'm actually referring to is if you're something like a druid, a shaman, a paladin, where you've got a relic slot. Now these relics that you currently use as your BIS, you've probably just bought off the Valor Quartermaster and they're 359, and there's absolutely nothing you can do or anywhere you can go to get anything higher eye level. And this can be particularly annoying when you're using full 372 gear or even 379 gear from Sinestra, and then you just rock in this random 359 item that you can do nothing about. Well, in Firelands, a completely new system is introduced, and when I say new system, I use the term loosely because it is only an item that drops, but they're called crystallized firestones. Now these are a heroic only drop, so you're going to have to be doing 10-man heroic or 25-man heroic, and they have about a 10% chance per boss. So you're likely going to see 1 to 2 of these a week, probably absolute maximum, and some weeks where you see none at all. Now the good thing about these is you can upgrade a 378 item up to 391. Now 378 is the standard normal item level in Firelands, and you're going to be getting 378 items from the first 6 bosses. When you get to killing Ragnaros, he's going to drop 384 item level, and this is going to be weapons and trinkets. There is a couple of other items like some shoulders, gloves, wrists, head, but the majority of the time, really what you're hoping drops from Ragnaros is going to be a weapon or a trinket. So when you then start doing heroic, you're going to be getting 391 item level from the first 6 bosses, and then from Ragnaros you're going to be getting 397 item level, which is going to be the highest item level you can get this tier. So what are the crystallized firestones actually for then? Well, they can't be used on tons of items, but now there's plenty of 378 item level trash drops that you can get, ranging from tanking rings or DPS necks, lots of weapons, a leather belt, and as I say, really, the weapons, there's a weapon for pretty much everybody. And the thing is, these are 378, and some of them are actually really good, like Apparatus of Khazgoroth. So it's a strength trinket with a stacking proc that you can then use to consume the charges. And ultimately, once you've started using it on normal, you'd probably want to carry on using it, which is quite fortunate because if you get a crystallized firestone, you can upgrade it to 391. So it's the equivalent of the first 6 bosses in Firelands Heroic. But when it comes to what I was talking about before, we're getting stuck with the lower item level relics, well, the relics that you buy from the vendor for Valor points can actually be upgraded to 391 as well now. So while still be plenty of different weapon choices or even trinket choices that people can use, the relic that you get from your Valor points, you're pretty much going to be stuck with. So every person that uses a relic is absolutely going to want to get a crystallized firestone to be able to upgrade it to 391 because it's literally the only option you've got. Now, obviously, for many classes, some of these BOEs are actually going to be on par with what you can get from the raid bosses themselves anyway. So, for example, for a Feral Druid, getting Rancier of Hatred, whilst, of course, you're probably going to want to get the Major Domo staff purely so you can turn into a Fire Kitty. To almost remove RNG, if you can pick a Rancier of Hatred up early, which is going to be 378 eye level, it either drops on trash in your first run or you pick one up off the auction house and you get the first crystallized firestone, you've straight away got a weapon as a Feral Druid that you'll use for literally the entire tier. And that's just one example. So let's have a quick fly over the bosses. We're not going to go into tactics, but what are you going to be getting yourself into when you step into Firelands for the first time? Well, firstly, there's a lot of trash, and a lot of the trash is avoidable, but you do need to kill a certain amount of trash to be able to force Shannox to spawn. And when you're killing trash, you'll see that a horn is blowing in the distance, and that will keep going until Shannox actually spawns. Now, while Shannox is probably not going to be the first boss that you actually kill, Beftalak most likely will be. Now, Beftalak's actually got a very interesting skip because it's got a horrible amount of trash between the main entrance to Beftalak's sort of pathway that leads up to her, and of course the boss herself. Now, I've got side-by-side videos on here purely to show you that you can both do it on Cataclysm and Retail. So I see absolutely no reason this skip won't work in Cataclysm the same way it works still on Retail now and on pretty much any private server I've ever played. But basically, you're just going around the side of the cliff and dropping down into Beftalak's lair instead of running through and killing all the trash. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to be wanting to get reputation, so likely the first few clears, you're going to want to kill the trash anyway, and we'll get onto what the reputation's for in just a minute. But the good thing with this skip is actually, not only do you not need to kill anything on the way in, you don't need to kill anything on the way out either, because there's no trash next to the little ledge where you're going to jump down back into the main open area of Firelands. But Beftalak's quite a fun boss with lots of spiders, so hopefully you don't suffer from arachnophobia, where half your team's going to go up the top on the web fighting the boss, and half the team's going to be down the bottom dealing with ads. Lord Rhyolith is a really interesting boss where it's actually 3 attackable targets. It's got its body and both its legs. You control the boss's movement by doing damage to the legs, and you're trying to get him to stomp out loads of volcanoes. Alishrazor is an absolutely amazing encounter, which also has a chance of dropping Flame Talon of Alishrazor, which is basically a flaming Anzu. It is only a ground mount. The flying mount actually comes from Ragnaros, which we'll get to soon. But with Alishrazor, you're going to have set people flying around in the air, flying through rings to be able to maintain a haste buff, and then people on the floor dealing with ads. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but I will get boss guides out closer to the time. Shannox is the boss that we was clearing trash for to force the spawn. It's basically just a boss with 2 dogs, and you just need to manage a spear mechanic. Balrog is a really interesting fight which drops crystals, where you have to have people take stacks of the crystals, and you get huge healing buffs to be able to top the tank off in a single cast. Major Domo is the boss that every druid is going to be looking forward to every week in hopes to get the Fire Kitty staff, and it basically just has a few forms. It's Night Elf form, Cat form and Scorpion form, and depending on what form it's in, depends on what abilities it's going to be doing and whether you should stack or spread as a raid. And then finally, Ragnaros, which is a very long fight, very difficult fight. Still probably goes down in history today as one of the more difficult bosses on Heroic. And if you're pushing Heroic progress, the vast majority of guilds are going to be getting to see this boss a lot. And actually the run back to the boss quite a lot. And as I said before, on Heroic, this boss does drop a flying mount. Now, like I said, there was no point going into massive detail on the bosses because by the time the raid comes out, you're going to have forgot it all anyway. But they're the 7 bosses. Now next, what about tier gear? Now tier gear hasn't changed from tier 11, so you'll still be able to get the gloves, the legs and the chest off of the vendors for Valor points. Then to upgrade these, you're going to have Shannox that drops the leg token, you're going to have Balrog that drops the glove token, and finally Alishrazor, which drops the chest token. And the same as tier 11, you'll use these tokens in combination with the normal piece that you've bought for Valor points, and it will magically become 391 eye level. As for the other 2 pieces of tier, you're going to need to get the shoulders from Major Domo, so if you kill him on normal, you're just going to get the normal shoulder token. If you kill him on heroic, you're going to get the heroic shoulder token, and the same applies to Ragnaros for the head pieces. And then when it comes to the reputation is called Avengers of Hyjal, and the only way you can get this rep is in Firelands. So don't get confused and think when the Molten Front dailies launch with this raid, you're going to be able to get the reputation from those, because those only actually give Guardians of Hyjal rep, which you can currently get by spamming heroics with a tabard on, or obviously questing in Mount Hyjal itself. There's absolutely 0 quests to be able to get the reputation any faster. You only get it by killing mobs inside Firelands. Assuming that it's going to be the same as it was back in the day, each heroic boss actually gives more reputation than normal bosses, and they're pretty generous amounts as well, getting 500 reputation on heroic from Shannox, Rhyolith, Beftalak and Alishrazor, up to 800 for Balrog, Major Domo and Ragnaros. If you want to know what you're going to get on normal, basically just half it. Pretty much all the trash rewards reputation up until Honoured, but the large trash mobs like the Molten Lords or any of the big giants, which you'll probably see in trade chat at some point looking for giant farms, they give reputation all the way up to Revered. Now the rep in here is actually really good, and if you're not one of those guilds that are going to go in and full clear on night 1, you're probably going to be spending your time outside of your main raids trash farming as a small group. Reason for that is at friendly, which will take you literally 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of killing trash, and you're going to get a 378 cloak, which is pretty much going to be better than anything you're using at the moment. At honored, you can get a 378 belt. Now, it's worth mentioning none of these actually cost any currency that you need to go and farm, so it's not like you need to farm valor or keep hold of valor to be able to buy these. It's just flat out gold. Now, the reason that's really good is for some classes, like let's say a feral druid, for example, being able to buy 2 of the same belt to gem them slightly differently for tanking or DPS. Or let's say a healing priest or even a holy paladin or something like that that's a tailor that can buy 2 of the same cloak and have the spirit proc tailoring cloak enchant on one and obviously the intellect proc on another. So depending on what fight you're doing, depends on what cloak you pop on. Just a little bonus, really. Then at Revered, everyone's going to get a pretty good trinket. Now, all of them have got a strong equip bonus, but then an actual mental 1-minute cooldown use effect. So, for example, the agility one gives you 1277 agility for 15 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown, which is tiny, obviously, but also gives 383 mastery. The intellect one has a lot of crit. There's a spirit version as well, which gives 1149 intellect. An on-use strength one for things like warriors and rep paladins. And a dodge trinket, which is not amazing, but it's quite unique because once you use it, it absorbs 20% incoming damage up to 57k or just under 57k. And after the effect ends, you take 8% of the damage absorbed every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. So it can just smooth out big damage a little bit. And then finally, at Exalted, you're going to be able to get a 391 ring. Now remember, even if you're only farming normal bosses, you're going to be able to get to Exalted. And this is a heroic item level ring. So this ring is not going to be replaced until Dragon Soul. And what makes it obviously amazing, as you can see, is all of them have got a socket and all of them are red. So you can stick your big primary stat gem in there. I mean, even if it weren't red, you could still put your big primary stat gem in there, but at least this way you're going to get the socket bonus as well. And really, that's about it with a reputation. There is one minor little thing that I want to throw in, which is not necessarily anything to do with Firelands itself, but it does come out at the same time as Firelands because it's when the Valor and Justice Point vendors get updated. So if you're not aware already, everything that's on the Valor vendor for Tier 11 is going to go to the Justice Point vendor. So you're going to be able to get your Tier 11 and all the Tier 11 relics and all that sort of stuff with Justice Points. And then all the new stuff goes onto the Valor Point vendor, and obviously all your Valor Points will be reset. When I say reset, don't panic, you're not going to lose them. They're just going to turn into Justice Points. But one of the most difficult item slots to fill, or at least in my experience, one of the most difficult item slots to fill throughout Tier 11 is normally bracers. Now, I've got so many characters and so many of them are still missing bracers for certain specs. Well, actually, the Valor Vendor BOE item this time round in Tier 12 is bracers, which is absolutely amazing. So obviously Tier 11 was boots, where you can buy the boots and sell them on the auction house. For Tier 12, it's bracers. So a tip would be, if you've got lots of characters, be ready to Valor cap week 1, so you can then buy bracers for your main, or your main ult, or both of them, whatever. But, you know, being able to get 378 bracers almost immediately is going to be pretty big. And quite honestly, I think that's a decent enough overview that you can get on with your day, and more importantly, I can go and get on with mine. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Plenty more content coming, so if you subscribe, you won't miss them. Drop a comment below, let me know if any of this was new to you, or what you're looking forward to about Firelands, and I'll see you on the next one.